And now I feel kind of stupid because all the stuff I've been talking about earlier about how I would use an insert mesh brush for this, I actually do it here. So I did it back then. It just took me a while to figure it out. So here we're going to put a little bit of ornamentation on the top here. So I just duplicated that off, inserted multiple edge loops with ZModeler. Let's see where I go with this. Oh, I was just dividing up that surface just for something nice to sculpt on. You could just Dynamesh that as well, probably. But if you did want more predictable geometry, you can Z-remesh it into nice even quads. Take your adaptive size down to 0. And here I'm just getting my idea out. Again, we're just doing a block out of the ornamentation, but then, just like I did all the previous videos, the lion and the Victorian Acanthus ornamentation on the cheek, as more of a block out. And then I do actually go through and use an insert mesh brush to refine all these things, I think. At least that's when I was scrubbing through. I was like, oh, I guess I did. So again, this is just more of a clay brush, clay buildup, clay, Damien standard brush, H-polish trim dynamic solution just to get these things twisting, and it's just really, it's hard to control. It's kind of a pain. So again, we do eventually get in here and use an insert mesh brush, which is much more easier to control. And if you do go to my YouTube channel, look up controlling curves, or Google that, ZBrush controlling curves, and you'll get all my videos about how to control how your curve brush works for your insert mesh brushes, so you get a very nice, precise way to make these things happen. So this is a little bit of a nicer result than I've been getting previously, but still just really hard to control. I'm going to try and look like mask and then polygroup it out. You can Z-remesh the result. You can even Z-remesh it down the one edge, down one half and then the other half. Looks like a little clay polish too, just to kind of refine those. And then maybe grab it as an alpha. You can make the document size like 1024 by 1024, and then you can use it as an alpha brush. Nowadays, you could use that geometry and make it a multi-alpha brush. You can look that up on my channel too. It's Zbrush Ornate, what's new. And then you can stamp that out, and then stamp it out in multiple places and just have that as a repeating detail. So a lot of techniques I'm trying, failing. Like I said before, in my live streams on Twitch and YouTube, I might go through there and we'll try these techniques again, knowing what I know now. These are kind of legacy videos. Again, found stuff. Going through here, and I just want to close those holes, so just going through and bridging these edges just so I can get a nice close holes operation on the back there. It doesn't matter what the geometry back there looks like, I just want something solid. And then you can use Matchmaker brush or use the modifier, the projection strength to kind of bend this back. And then now I'm like, oh, let's make an insert mesh brush. So it's got a pointed tip towards me, and then away from me it's broader, and then you could add some thickness, and you feel free to make multiple variations of these. So when you actually go to make the ornamentation, you can drag it out, weld the points. Again, on my YouTube channel, just do a search for hair creation techniques, and it's the exact same thing, only you're going to use it for ornamentation this time. So I'm just trying out different feels and fall-offs and control loops and creasing to get the exact feel that I want. Closing these holes down here, cleaning those up a little bit with ZModeler. But it's the same idea. I don't know exactly what I'm doing here, but just trying to get a tapered end. And then creating a tripart curve brush. So you got one end that's both ends are kind of the same thing, and then there's kind of a repeating middle. Of course, now I'm getting really fancy for some reason with my tripart curve brush, but you don't have to get this fancy, but just simple ornamentation. And now you can actually do this in conjunction with live Boolean, so you could actually use this to carve in and etch things. So if you go to Zbrush Ornate, what's new playlist on my channel, that'll give you all the information about live Booleans, and then also how to use insert mesh brushes and framing meshes to control your curves, or a curves helper. And then you could very easily just pass this through an object and then etch with these shapes here. So I'm taking a lot of time to really figure out this thing here. Goodness gracious. Just to get a tripart curve brush that has a tapered end and a hollow inside. That would be a lot easier to accomplish if I would have just taken that outer shell and then extruded it in when I was done. So, and again, you can do multiple variations of these. You can do like half towards you, half away. I think that's what I'm doing. And then you can store all of these into the same brush, and then you can create curve brushes out of them, and then taper them thick to thin. Again, go to my hair creation curve techniques, and yeah, now that's what I was doing. I was like, I want half towards me, half away. And of course, you do want that draft to go straight back. Probably you don't want it hollow, so that was kind of a mistake on my part. But you'll see what I'm doing now. Is just with this new brush that I've made with all those different tips. Ooh, I'd like to have that brush back, actually. I'd have to recreate it now. These things are so old. I don't know where they are now. But going through now and using insert mesh brushes to kind of drive these. Now, if you want to make them thinner, you drop your Z intensity down when you're dragging them out, and that'll make them thinner. If you want to over crank them under your brush modifiers there's a strength multiplier. So you can crank that up, and that'll make it even more relief there. So again, hollowing these things out was a bad idea. I wish I hadn't spent so much time trying to figure that out, because you do want that draft straight back. You don't want any undercuts, especially if you're going to like 3D print this thing. Undercuts are a bad idea. Having Ghost turned on with your turn transparency on the lower right hand side, and then turning Ghost on will allow you to drag your insert mesh brushes without being affected by your previous blockout sculpt. So I'm replacing my blockout sculpt now with insert mesh brushes. Again, I'm not sure how successful I am back then, but now you can go through here and you can use your move brush in conjunction with auto masking, or mask by topological, or mask by group, polygroup, and then you can move those things around. At the very end, you can dynamesh them all together and then Z-remesh, or use Z-modeler to bridge, or to clean up any transitions between the acanthus leaves or decoration. I'm not even sure what part of those would be acanthus or not. And also making Z insert mesh brushes that are more closer to what you want. You can add the detail to the insert mesh brushes, so you don't have to go back in. See, this is what I'm doing now, is I dynamesh it all together, and now I'm doing a cleanup pass on them. So they are a little bit cleaner, but I am still having to dynamesh at the very end and add my details. If you're a little bit more careful than I was, you could just make better insert mesh brushes. Here, you could also use Z-modeler to punch in holes, or live booleans, and then drop your insert mesh brushes. What I did was just subdivide it up and use my clay brush and just go through and drag dot stroke with an alpha those little divots to sit those little rivets into. And then now just making sure, I'm going through and Z-remeshing all the lion head pieces. So duplicate off, Z-remesh, project all, subdivide, projectile, subdivide, projectile, subdivide, with just those two subtools showing. And then now you'll get a much cleaner, nicer sculptable surface rather than just a dynamesh. So that's all I'm doing here. Z-remesh, subdivide, project, get rid of my original block out dynamesh sculpt, and then just go through and refine. And it's a lot of just Damien standard clay brush, clay buildup, H polish. Yeah. Smooth brush. You can try clay polish too. That might get you some interesting results depending on the settings that you use. And you can also go into the masking menu and say mask by cavity, mask by edges, mask by surfaces, and see if you can mask and then sharpen up your edges that way in a little bit more of a procedural way rather than manually going through and H polishing edges and stuff like that. Looks like our detailing's coming to an end. I hope you enjoyed that step through memory lane with me. Like I said before, these are data techniques, so on my live stream maybe we'll cover some newer techniques. But, some of it's still valid. You can still do all this stuff in ZBrush, so if any of it looked interesting to you, by all means, use them.